The following is a special presentation. Eyewitness News and the Providence Journal bring you live coverage. Now, a campaign 2012 U.S. Senate debate.
Right now from Rhode Island College, the first live televised debate between Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and his Republican challenger, Barry Hinckley. Good evening, I'm Tim White. We have a lot of important issues to discuss tonight, and we'll tackle many of them as we try and help you figure out the differences between the two men looking for your vote. Over the next 60 minutes, we're going to be going in depth. This debate is airing live right now on WPRI 12 and online, WPRI.com. I will be moderating this debate and asking questions along with our panel, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi, and from our news partner, the Providence Journal, Edward Fitzpatrick. Now let's get down to business. We will begin with 1-minute opening remarks. I want to ask everyone here to, again, please hold your applause until the very end of the debate so everyone here in our live audience and those watching at home can hear the answers from the candidates. The order for opening statements was determined by a drawing. We begin with Republican challenger Barry Hinckley. Mr. Hinckley is the founder of a successful software company. Prior to that, he helped run his family's boat building business. This is his first run for public office. Mr. Hinckley, your opening remarks.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much, Tim, Ted, and Ed, for sponsoring this event, Channel 12 and the Providence Journal. Thank you all in the audience here and at home for taking time out of your day to learn more about these two candidates in this crucial election. Senator, good to be here with you, although I will admit I'm a little uncomfortable being to your left here. I didn't think that was politically possible, but I'll see what we can do tonight. On a much more serious note, times are very, very difficult in Rhode Island. I've been campaigning for over 500 days, speaking to Rhode Islanders about the predicament we find ourselves in. A last-place team. Rhode Island, unfortunately, is 50th in business friendliness, and with that comes high unemployment and many, many troubles at home and here in our legislature. Tonight, you will hear two different plans to solve the problems that are at our feet. Senator Whitehouse will most likely speak about his plan, which is more government, more taxes, and more regulation.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Your time is up. Now, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2006. Prior to that, he was the Rhode Island Attorney General from 1999 to 2003. He's been involved in public service for a total of 28 years. Mr. Whitehouse, your opening remarks.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Ed. And thank you, Rhode Island College, for hosting us. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in. Listening is probably the most important thing that I do as a U.S. Senator. And I have heard loud and clear, and I understand how difficult the situation is in Rhode Island right now, how hard the economic times are. For many people in Rhode Island, this has actually been a time of suffering. And that means that we have to press hard for jobs and economic recovery, to sustain our country's economic recovery, and to accelerate Rhode Island's economic recovery. In doing so, we have to do that from the middle class out. We've tried pushing all the benefits to the top and having it trickle down. That's wrong, and it doesn't work. And as we do this, we have to protect the basic mainstays of the American middle class and of the Rhode Island middle class, and those are Medicare, Social Security, and Pell Grants for upward mobility.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. And gentlemen, let's dive right into the topics at hand. As you both know, there is no strict format to tonight's debate. We're looking for an open and honest discussion of the issues. Of course, we allow for some back and forth. In fact, we encourage it as long as it's with the topic at hand. If I feel you're going too long or you are not answering the question, I will jump in. Let's begin. Gentlemen, I'm sure it will come as no surprise to either of you that our polls show the biggest issue for voters right now is jobs. So let's start there. And Mr. Whitehouse, we're going to begin with you. We have the second highest unemployment rate in the country. When you came into office, unemployment was 4.8% in Rhode Island. We stand here tonight, it's 10.5%. Democrats have had complete or partial control of Washington, D.C. that entire time. For a Rhode Islander looking for a job, why not give the reins back to Republicans?
Well, actually, Democrats have not had control of Washington during that entire time. When I got there, President Bush was in charge, and it was at the end of his term that the biggest economic calamity to hit this country since the Great Depression took place. And I think that explains what happened to our economy. We have not sprung back as fast as we should have. I think that the strategy we have to follow is pretty clear to come back. Innovation, manufacturing, and infrastructure, I think, are the three areas where we need to focus. And that's where I've put in a lot of my work. If you drive by the Providence Place Mall, you'll go over a land bridge on 95. If you go under it, there are planks across the I-beams to keep the highway from falling in on the people driving underneath and the Amtrak trains going by. We need to improve our infrastructure. The southbound lane, because of Tiger grants that Jack Reed and I worked so hard for, is about to be restored. Another piece of legislation that I've worked for, once funded, will allow the northbound lane to get done. We have a new crane and a new pier at Quonset that are opening up Quonset to short sea shipping and to offshore wind turbines.
Mr. Whitehouse,
and I'll leave it there because we can come back to manufacturing and innovation later. But I think infrastructure is an absolute priority for Rhode Island.
And you've listed off some successes in infrastructure, but it might ring pretty hollow to one of the 60,000 people that are still unemployed. Rhode Island is being left behind in what is the rest of the country is seeing as a recovery. So why is it going to be any different in the next 6 years if, again, we're still in double-digit unemployment rates?
Look, we are seeing a very, very slow recovery. It is painfully slow. It is agonizingly slow. And for the 60,000 people who are still unemployed, it doesn't look like a recovery yet. And that's why we need to continue to do the things that will provide jobs. And the core thing and the easy thing is infrastructure, because we need it. Everybody understands that we need the work to be done. We're not talking about building bridges to nowhere. Rhode Island has some of the worst infrastructure in the country in roads and bridges. We have work to be done on water, and we have these new projects like the port.
Let me wrap up with you here. In 6 years, if we're on this stage again, 6 years from now, and we're talking, what is the unemployment rate going to be in 6 years if we give you another term?
Well, I don't think we'll have another economic meltdown between now and then. The trend is towards recovery. I'm making a wild guess, but I would say 6%.
Mr. Hinckley, let's stay with jobs here. Hours before this debate, you released your ambitious contract with Rhode Island. To promote growth, you call for reducing the corporate tax rate, providing new job training programs, expanding access to Pell Grants, paying teachers more, all while capping spending at 18.4% of the GDP, and of course having a balanced budget amendment. That's just a taste. You're making a lot of promises here, Mr. Hinckley. How do you plan to pay for all of that?
Well, you pay for it by growing the economy, and that's something we don't have today. You don't have infrastructure, you don't have teachers, you don't have firemen unless you have people in the private sector working and paying taxes. Unfortunately, 100,000 Rhode Islanders, it's estimated, have moved out of Rhode Island in the last 10 years. And they didn't move out because they wanted to. They moved out because we have devastatingly high unemployment. In fact, everything since the senator's been in office has almost doubled. Unemployment, our debt. And it's not working for Rhode Islanders today. So what do we need to do? To get our economy going and to get it growing so we can raise more revenue. As Marco Rubio said, we don't need more taxes, we need more taxpayers. And when you have a growing economy, you can actually afford a lot of these things.
Wouldn't that be a long-term solution to a problem that people are facing right now? As I told the senator, 60,000 people unemployed. You're talking about raising revenue by improving the economy. That's not overnight.
Here's what we need to do to get the economy going. We need to make Rhode Island and America the most attractive place in the world to do business. End of story. Businesses and capital move where they're treated well. We know capital is not treated well here in Rhode Island.
How do you do that?
We need a totally new tax code here in Rhode Island, which I cannot affect directly because I'm not on Smith Hill, but I can constantly talk about it, which is something we don't have today. Our congressional delegation never pushes Smith Hill to be business friendly. Nationally, we have the worst, highest tax rate in the world. Not only is it the highest tax rate in the world, it's also the most expensive to
corporate tax rate.
Corporate tax rate. It's also the most expensive to comply with. We have massive regulatory problems. It's incredibly expensive to put people to work in America.
What should the corporate tax rate be then? We're right now at 35%.
Simpson Bulls has it in the 20s, and so does Paul Ryan, so that's a good starting point.
What about President Obama has put on the table 28%? Would you vote that up or down for a corporate tax
Simpson
rate?
Bulls has the same thing at 28%, but I don't know why he waited 4 years to do it. I mean, they spent 2 years masterminding a massive new 2,000-plus page entitlement program and talk about things we can't afford when they should have been focused on jobs.
We will talk about the entitlement program, but I would like to have you weigh in, Senator, if we could, on the corporate tax rate. You hear him talk about lowering it into the 20s. Your own president has said we should lower it to 28%. Is that something you would support?
The corporate tax system is a nightmare right now. If you look at the entire tax system, there have been reports that say that Americans spend 7 billion hours every year engaged in compliance with this complicated code. At home, it means that, for instance, CVS, a major employer in Rhode Island, a great company with headquarters in Woonsocket, pays a full 35% tax rate. Other companies, like, for instance, Carnival Cruise Lines, pay a 0.8% tax rate. GE has paid virtually 0. The oil companies pay around 7. It makes no sense.
So what should it be
We need
then?
to eliminate that and drop it. I think 28% is probably a reasonable target, but we have to make this decision in the context of trying to move towards a balanced budget. If we take all of the savings from the tax code and only put them into lowering rates and don't do anything about the deficit, we've missed an opportunity.
Okay, Mr. Hinckley, I'll give you 30 seconds to give your final word on the job section. If there's anything that you heard there that you would like to respond to, now's your opportunity.
Well, let me give you an example. One of my employees, an average employee at my company that I founded, that now has 175 employees, made about $68,000 a year before taxes. After compliance, cost of government, health care, regulation, complying with this tax code, that employee cost me, an American business, about $93,000. That employee only took home about $49,000. So the reason America is uncompetitive is because the cost of government, the government that he wants more of, almost doubles the cost, and in some industries like manufacturing does double the cost of employing people here in America. That's the problem. Taxes and regulation are driving jobs offshore.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Now we go to Ed Fitzpatrick from the Providence Journal.
Mr. Hinckley, the winner of the race for president will inherit a Supreme Court that splits in 5-4 votes on some of the most significant rulings. Meanwhile, 4 of the 9 justices are in their 70s. So tell us, how is the presidential election important to the future of the court? And what is the Supreme Court ruling you would most like to overturn?
The Supreme Court obviously is the backbone of our country in many, many ways. As far as overturning, of course, I was unhappy with Justice Roberts' decision on the mandate for the health care, and I would like to see that overturned, but it's in the rearview mirror now. And obviously, a president and the Senate has a major say by not only nominating but then confirming these next justices. So I believe it's incredibly important who our next president is, because it will have a large impact on the Supreme Court.
Senator Whitehouse, as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, what's the first question you would ask for the next Supreme Court nominee? And how, in your view, is the presidential election important to the future of the court?
I think the question would have to depend on who the nominee was. So I don't have a prefigured first question going in. I think the question of the presidential election and its importance to the court is very real, and it's going to be very real in the lives of Rhode Islanders. We have a court that has turned to the extreme right. It has done so over and over again by narrow 5-4 margins. They've preferred moving right than building consensus. And the result has been really tough decisions, like poor old Lily Ledbetter, who was basically cheated out of a fair wage. The Supreme Court threw out her claim because they said she hadn't found out soon enough. So we had to correct that with a law. To your question about what's the worst decision and the one that most urgently needs to be overturned, without a doubt, it's the Citizens United decision. That law overturned 100 years of regulation in the elections world. It unleashed billionaires, big corporations, foreign corporations, to spend unlimited amounts of money in our elections, and the way they're doing so now is very often doing it secretly. Dark money, it's called. We don't know who's behind it. It's a prescription for scandal and disaster, as John McCain said in our brief to the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. And Ted, before we go to you, I'm just curious, since we're on the topic of the U.S. Supreme Court, I'd like to know from each of you, and Mr. Hinckley, who is your favorite Supreme Court justice? Actively serving right now, I should clarify.
You know, I do like Clarence Thomas quite a bit because of what he stood for, and, you know, of course, how he got there. You know, he had a lot of personal battles along the way, and I respect him greatly.
And Mr. Whitehouse, your favorite
I'd say for similar reasons, Justice Sotomayor. She has led a real life of accomplishment. She's come up from very little, and she has done a wonderful job so far on the court. And of course, we needed more women on the court.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Ted Nesi.
Mr. Whitehouse, the budget for Medicare and Medicaid is expected to nearly triple between now and 2050 to cost almost 13% of the U.S. economy, as you know. Do you think the nation can afford to spend that much of the economy on Medicare and Medicaid, or will Congress need to cut some of these programs?
I don't think the nation can afford to continue to spend what we spend on health care in this country. The United States of America spends 18% of its gross domestic product on health care. The most inefficient other country that we compete with, industrialized country, is at about 12%. That means we have a 50% inefficiency premium over our most inefficient competitor. That is a problem. And it's a problem that Rhode Island is doing great things to solve with a lot of leadership. It's a problem that the President's health care bill does a lot to solve. It is absolutely vitally important that we solve that problem. It would be a mistake to redefine that problem and say, oh, this isn't a health care problem, this is just a Medicare and Medicaid problem. At that point, what you're doing is you're letting that 18% machine continue to roll. You're letting the waste and the excess cost that isn't just Medicare and Medicaid, it's also Blue Cross, Kaiser, VA, across the system. You're letting all that continue, and then you're saying to people who are on Medicare, like the people I talk to all the time at our senior centers, by the way, we're going to have to cut your benefits because we're not going to do the hard work of fixing our system to make it as efficient as it should be.
Mr. Whitehouse,
so it's a diversion to go that road, and I think it's unfortunate.
I'd like to briefly first have Mr. Hinckley weigh in on some Republicans, including Paul Ryan, have proposed that on Medicare it should be converted to a premium support or voucher program for those under 55. Do you think that's perhaps the way to go on Medicare?
Obviously, we're spending way too much money on health care because we can't afford it. Medicare on its current trajectory is going out of business, and that's not good for any Americans, especially all of those of us that have been paying in our whole lives. So we do have to solve these problems. And when you walk into a restaurant, do you want one choice or two? You know, what I see through the Ryan plan is choice. So, you know, first of all, it's a piece of legislation that's being offered, but the Senate won't even debate it. They shoot it down without even debating it. It hasn't even come to a vote. We have to get Congress working again in a bipartisan fashion, left and right, meeting in the middle, like Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan did, like Bill Clinton did with Newt Gingrich, and discussing these important problems. And we also have to engage the private sector to help solve these problems, because I have news for you. The government has no track record of running things on time or on budget. So if you think the government is going to solve your health care problems and lower costs, I've got another thing for you.
Mr. Hinckley, let me stick with you there. You talk a lot in this campaign about the national debt, but looking back at the historical record, during Bill Clinton's 8 years as president, the federal debt rose by $1.4 trillion, but during George W. Bush's 2 terms, it rose by $6.1 trillion, and it has increased another $5 trillion under President Obama. But the current increase...
Although I jump in on that just to say that one of the reasons it's continued under President Obama is because the Bush policies continued.
And I'm sure we're going to dive into that, Mr.
I will
Whitehouse.
give you a chance to respond, Senator, and you'll get that time, Mr. Hinckley, as well. But my question is, why would voters believe that Republicans will hold down the debt when it increased so much under President Bush as well?
Well, first of all, to all you listening here this evening, I thought the Bush years were a train wreck. I thought $300 billion a year in debt was outrageous. Little did I know that the President administration, backed up by Senator Whitehouse here, would get it up to $1.6 trillion, 5 times that in an annual year. I actually was so disgusted with it that I dropped out of the Republican Party for 8 years. So I don't think we should go back to the Bush years. But just because someone has a label behind them on R or D doesn't make them bad, and it doesn't put them all in one category. I'm a centrist. I will vote like Scott Brown. He votes with his party about 65% of the time, which means he reads the bills on behalf of his constituents and votes what he thinks is best. And I will do the exact same thing. Extreme partisanism is what's killing Washington, D.C. You know, the senator here, I know he's passionate about what he believes in, but he votes 98% of the time with the leadership.
I believe it was 96 in this session.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Hinckley, but the question is, though, if you go to Congress, you would be a vote to put Mitch McConnell as the head of the Senate. And in the end, even if you voted against it, the Republicans could pass the policy they have, and we saw what happened last time. How would you convince them to do otherwise?
Well, first of all, I've never spoken to Mitch McConnell, so I don't think you can assume I'd vote for him. I've never met the man.
Would you? So you might not vote for Mitch McConnell?
I might
if he's the
not.
Republican
There's
leader?
always a challenge of who the leader's going to be. And I'm a big fan of the next generation. I'm 46 years old. My generation is inheriting the train wreck of the last 30 years, where we've gone from less than $1 trillion in debt in 1980 to over $16 trillion today. We have to deal with this problem. My children are in the audience this evening. My children are going to have to pay this debt back. And just to put that into perspective for everyone out there listening, we're racking up deficits of over $1 trillion a year. And to put that into perspective, 1 trillion seconds, just one, is almost 32,000 years. That's the scope of the problem this runaway government spending is handing our children, and it needs to be tackled.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Mr. Whitehouse, I know you have thoughts on this, please.
Well, let's jump in on the Ryan budget, because that's been the topic, and I think my opponent has said that he would support it, that he would have voted for it.
Actually for the Simpson-Bowles plan.
No, you said that you would have voted for the Ryan budget, and indeed you called it a good starting point, which implies that you'd actually go further. So
you have to open the Senate for business.
I am completely opposed to the Ryan budget. I think it is disastrous. And viewers might say, well, look, Sheldon's a Democrat. The Ryan budget is the Republican budget. I'm sure there's, this may be a partisan thing. So let's look at some of the other things that have been said about the Ryan budget. Ronald Reagan was a pretty good Republican. His budget director said about the Ryan budget that it appears to be an attack on the poor in order to coddle the rich. He calls it a toxic brew that worsens our $1 trillion deficit. Ronald Reagan's economic advisor, Bruce Bartlett, said this, and bear with me for a minute. The Ryan plan is a monstrosity. The rich would receive huge tax cuts while the social safety net would be shredded to pay for them. It is less of a wish list than a fairy tale, utterly disconnected from the real world, backed up by make-believe numbers and unreasonable
We understand
assumptions.
you don't like the Ryan plan, Senator.
One last. We're
going to run out of time.
The
You won't be able
Conference
to...
of Catholic Bishops says that the Ryan plan fails the basic moral test. So, yeah, we do disagree on the Ryan plan. I think it's a terrible plan, and I have the support.
What's your plan, then? What's your plan on deficits?
$16 trillion national debt. We know you don't like the Ryan plan, as Ted pointed out. You've listed examples. So how would you deal with that count-up clock of $16 trillion and counting right now?
The target number that everybody agrees to, including the Simpson-Bowles group, is that we need to eliminate $4 trillion in a 10-year budget period in order to be able to have a manageable level of debt. And so that's been the target of Simpson-Bowles, and that's been the target of all the discussions in Washington. $2 trillion of that, I believe, should be cuts on the spending side. $2 trillion of that, I believe, should be on the revenue side. At the moment, we have $1 trillion of those $2 trillion in cuts already in place under the Budget Control Act. We have the second trillion looming in the sequester. People don't like how that's organized, but you cannot deny the Democrats have put $2 trillion in cuts on the table. From the Republican side, we've had nothing. Oil subsidies for the big subsidies for the big oil companies, fighting for it. Warren Buffett paying a lower tax rate than his administrative assistant, fighting to defend that. They haven't identified a single loophole anywhere in the tax code that they would get rid of. So what we need to do is to have the Republicans do what my opponent says they should do, which is come to the middle, not follow the extreme toxic brew monstrosity of a fails the moral test Ryan budget, and instead put some revenue on the table. We're at an all-time low in revenue for decades.
Mr. Hinckley, I allowed him to go a little long there, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to anything you heard before we move on to the next topic.
Well, how do you come to the middle when you vote 96% of the time with your leadership? I mean, the best husband and wife don't get along 96% of the time. It is completely unrealistic. We need people to work together. And let's remember that Congress is a game. It goes from the House to the Senate. They pass legislation in the House. It goes to the Senate. They play a little ping pong back and forth, work out the differences. Instead of shooting it down, dead on arrival, without even discussing it, if you don't like it, mark it up and send it back. And then you get it in front of the president. That's what Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich did. That's what Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan did. And the U.S. Senate has been closed for business and won't even hear these bills. If you don't like it, mark it up and send it back.
Would you consider higher taxes, Mr. Hinckley?
I've already, Ed will attest to the fact that I had an op-ed in the Providence Journal last month that the rich will have to pay more. We are having a national disaster of debt, and we are going to have an all-hands-on-deck approach, but I don't believe in higher tax rates. I believe in a growing economy, fewer deductions, a fairer, simpler tax code that's easy to comply with, that brings jobs home, so you may be making more money but paying a lower rate. That's how we solve these problems.
Okay.
So the biggest racket that people have right now is that the hyper-rich pay at a capital gains tax rate at 15%, while the guy who drives a package delivery truck to their door, the police officer who patrols their neighborhood at night, the plumber who comes to fix their sink, has to pay a higher tax rate. And we've just heard my opponent say that he doesn't want to raise any rates. Well, that is a rate that has to go up. It simply is wrong and bad economic policy.
Yeah, I don't think that's exactly
That's
what
not
you
what I
said.
said.
Mr. Hinckley, please.
I've endorsed the Simpson-Bowles plan, which is higher rates. I also, in that same op-ed, I said income is income is income. And if you're paying at the 15%, that's going to be taxed as income going forward, just like Simpson-Bowles said. So actually, that's not true at all.
All right, let's move on to the next topic, and that is foreign policy. We'll stick with you, Mr. Hinckley. In the wake of the attacks last month on the U.S. consulate in Libya, you have called for an end to foreign aid to Egypt, Libya, and Pakistan. Explain for everyone how that would help stop terrorist attacks.
Well, let's face it. When a country like Egypt, 80% of them now being run by the Muslim Brotherhood, who, trust me, they are not aligned with the same values that we have here in America. 80% of Egyptians said they didn't want our money. $1.5 billion. I know it sounds like chump change to the people in Washington, D.C., but we're facing a toll over the Sakonnet River Bridge. We can't even get a free bridge in Rhode Island for $5 trillion in debt that they've racked up in 4 years, and we're pumping billions into foreign countries that don't like us.
So what about the old saying, if you're to pull out of these countries almost entirely, cut off the aid there, the old saying is keep your friends close and your enemies closer. In this case, you disagree with that?
Well, after World War II, we inherited the mantle of the world's police force, for better or worse. We have spent trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. It is time for the rest of the world to step up and help us out. Why do we get the bill for our U.S. Navy keeping the Persian Gulf open for business so Arab oil sheiks can become even richer? We get the bill for this. American taxpayers, my children, the fact that we are borrowing 40 cents on every dollar and pumping money abroad. I don't think Rhode Islanders want that right now. They want that money home, and we need a nation build right here.
Mr. Whitehouse, a different foreign policy question for you. It's becoming more evident that the State Department, if not the White House, was well aware the attack on the U.S. consulate in Libya was an organized assault on the anniversary of 9/11 rather than the storyline from U.S. officials, which was that it was a protest gone bad. Why haven't you called for congressional hearings to get to the bottom of this?
Congressional hearings have already been announced to get to the bottom of this, and the Intelligence Committee is going to be looking into it on its own, so I don't need to call for anything in that respect. On the earlier question about the funding for Egypt and Libya, there are very few people in the country and in the United States Senate who share my opponent's position. Rand Paul is one of them. He tried to call this for a vote in the Senate. I think he got 10 senators to vote for him. He didn't even win among Republicans. And the reason is that twofold. First, Israel is a vital ally in that area, and Israel wants us to continue to engage with Egypt. We have, in fact, a trilateral agreement.
How about that, Mr. Hinckley? If that's a point there, how would that affect our relationship with Israel?
As I said, we have to have the rest of the world. This isn't about not supporting the Middle East. It's about who does it. We're broke. I mean, you know why I know senators backed up that plan? Because they love spending money. I mean, he gave a frigate away to the Coast Guard in Manila. We could have used that here. The point is not supporting the Middle East. It's who does it. We need the international community to step up and support the Middle East. It can't be America alone anymore.
Mr. Whitehouse, I feel like you brushed off my question on Libya, so I'm going to ask you another way. Are you disappointed at all in the White House on this? I mean, there are many out there who think they've been less than transparent on the bombing and the attack on the U.S. consulate.
Look, My dad was a Foreign Service officer. He was assigned all of his life in dangerous places. We've been under house arrest in Africa. He was shot at in Vietnam. He was many years in the Southeast Asian conflict. He won, I think, every award that the State Department has to offer. And so the killing of Ambassador Stevens is very real to me and very personal. And I think it is, two things are vitally important. One, the Intelligence Committee of the Senate and whatever committees on the House want to do this, get to the bottom of exactly what happened. But more importantly, that we find out who did this and that we bring to them the same kind of justice that we brought to Osama bin Laden.
You're a former prosecutor. Do you take issue at all, again, with the White House and how they've handled it? Took 14 days for them to pivot away from the
It wasn't an issue day by day as to where they were that I focused on. I don't want to criticize them. What I want to say is that it's vitally important that we get to the bottom of what happened so we can really assess that point. But more to the point, it's even more important that we find out who did this and that we take them out.
Mr. Hinckley, do you care to comment on the attack on the consulate in Libya?
Yeah, it was very disturbing that the ambassador was in direct contact with the White House for 7 hours and they didn't send help. We have forces in friendly countries that could have gotten there. We have ships in the Mediterranean that could have launched aircraft and gotten people there. 7 hours went by where they're holding on by a thread, and eventually an ambassador was killed. First one since 1979, since the Carter administration. Do you notice the similarity here? It was a tragic train wreck. We went in there, kicked a hornet's nest, and left our ambassador, who asked for more security, unprotected. A total disaster.
Okay, thank you. Ed Fitzpatrick from the Providence Journal.
Senator Whitehouse, can you explain why you've chosen to send your children to private schools, and tell us what's the main change you would make in Rhode Island public education if you had the power to do so?
I want the best education that I can for them, and I felt that in their circumstances, the places that I chose to send them were the best schools for them. I think that the changes that we're trying to work towards in public education in Rhode Island have been twofold. The first is Race to the Top, which got us out from under the Bush No Child Left Behind problems that were driving our schools off a fiscal cliff, to use that phrase, and weren't improving the outcomes with kids. So we passed that in the Recovery Act, and Rhode Island has done very well under it. I want to compliment particularly Mayor Cicilline, who led the only effort in the state that brought together labor unions, school administrators, reformers, the NGOs that work with the schools, everybody on a really strong Race to the Top application that we were able to support and that was successful. The next thing we need to do is to move the bill that we passed, a bipartisan bill in the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee that has another piece in it that's very important to me that I got into that bill, which is to extend the reforms that Race to the Top and other programs permit and that the waivers are permitting, that extends those reforms to middle schools. Because my experience has been that middle schools are a real turning point in children's lives, and if we're not addressing problems there and they get out of hand there, then it's very hard to recover them.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse.
High school.
Mr. Hinckley, can you explain why you've chosen, I believe, to send your children to parochial schools, and can you identify the main change you would make in Rhode Island public education?
Well, a couple reasons I sent them to parochial school. First of all, I can't afford the $45,000 school that the senator sends his kids to. Sorry, Sasha and Hudson. Second of all, I do really enjoy the fact that my children know who Jesus Christ is and know who God is. Unfortunately, I became a Christian later in my life, and I didn't have the advantage as a young man to have that moral compass that I think probably could have saved me some heartache on my way up. So I'm very happy that my children will be in the situation where they at least will be able to make a choice when they're young adults. So I do like the Catholic school education. But more importantly, what we've brought out here is the senator and I can afford to send our kids to private school. But if you're in Providence, there's a large percentage chance that you're going to send your kid to a failing school, and you can't opt out if you don't have money. That's why I'm talking about these Pell Grants for all kids from K through 12. And this isn't more government grant spending. We can take the exact money that comes from the federal government, from the state, and from the towns, come up with a grant of around $11,000, is what I've worked out, and give every family in Rhode Island a grant for $11,000 so the parents can choose, like Senator Whitehouse did, like I did, on where those kids go to school, so they aren't stuck in a failing public school. Because once again, the government is not doing a great job educating our kids.
Is extending the Pell Grant for K through 12 code for a voucher program?
Is a food stamp code for a voucher program? Is Section 8 housing, subsidized housing code? I mean, if you want to play the semantics game, sure. It is called government money sending
Mr. Hinckley, it
kids to
expands
school.
government, which is something
Well,
that
I
you've
use
been,
the theme of Pell because that's education, right?
and
a
it
grant.
rings true here.
Right, so if it's a grant for college, why wouldn't it be a grant for high school and primary school? That's why we use the term. So keep in mind, I want everyone to hear this clearly. Our children are number 25 in the industrialized world out of 32 nations. You don't stay number 1 in the world when your kids are number 25. The government has had a monopoly on primary and secondary education for decades, and look where our children are. All I'm saying is let's open the market up, give parents a choice with a grant on where they educate their kids, and send them to Catholic school like I do, or send them to a fancy private school like Senator Whitehouse's kids go to.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Ted?
Mr. Hinckley, you said to Tim and I a few months ago that your platform is part Democrat and part Republican. I'd like to ask you to expand on that. Which of your positions do you think align with the Democrats nationally?
Well, as you know, I'm pro-choice, and I'm very, very pro-gay rights. I came out against DOMA a long time ago, and I look at it this way. If you're gay, and you're an American, you deserve every single right that other Americans have. And let's use an example. Our IRS, in my opinion, largely in part because of DOMA, discriminates against gay committed couples. They can't enjoy the IRS federal rights of a married couple. And I think that's wrong because they're Americans and they deserve every single right. So those are the two issues I'd say that line up more with the Democratic Party.
Can you point to a place where you disagree with the issues Mitt Romney is running on for president this year?
Well, yeah, he's obviously pro-life, and I'm pro-choice, so that's a big difference.
Mr. Whitehouse, as Mr. Hinckley pointed out, I did check it. You voted with the Democratic Party 96% of the time on major issues during the current session of Congress, but on some issues you have tried to work across the aisle. Can you name one issue where you agree with Mr. Romney?
Chinese currency. I think that,
I thought you'd say that.
I think that the Chinese have been manipulating their currency. Going after that is part of the manufacturing jobs strategy that I have. It has allowed China to make their products artificially cheaper than American products, and that gives them competitive advantage, I say unfair competitive advantage, in world markets. That's in addition to coming through our computers and stealing our intellectual property. That's in addition to the tax benefits that we unfortunately give international companies and American companies when they relocate jobs overseas. It's a very important part of that, though, and that's a place where Governor Romney
let me ask you, Paul Krugman, the Times columnist and who won a Nobel, wrote just yesterday that the debate about Chinese currency manipulation is, quote, an issue whose time has passed because China has allowed the exchange rate to go up significantly since 2010. Well, why do you disagree with Krugman at this point?
Well, it's gone up about 10 or 11%. I think it's gone from maybe 6.2 to 6.8, somewhere in there. I don't have the current numbers exactly. But, and there's some early opinion, as you've pointed out, saying that they're kind of in balance now. But there's also a lot of opinion that says they're not in balance yet. I don't think that that's a consensus opinion yet. It's a very spongy number, and I think I'd prefer to wait until there's consensus. Moreover, once you've declared them a currency manipulator, you continue to have that tool to work with. On the 96% point that you made, I'd point out that by the time something gets to the floor for a vote, most of the work is usually over. And so the floor reflects much more partisanship than really is. Senator Enzi of Wyoming, a Republican, likes to say that 80% of the work never gets to the floor, gets done. We agree to it. The 20% that gets fought over gets all the attention. In the area where we work together, I've started an Oceans Caucus with Lisa Murkowski, who's a Republican. I went to the Supreme Court to fight about Citizens United with John McCain, who's a Republican.
Mr. Whitehouse, I would like to cover a lot of ground tonight. We only have about an hour, so I'm going to interrupt you here, and especially because this is the favorite part of the evening for all candidates. I'm going to ask you to answer a yes or no question. Again, I'm trying to cover some ground here for the voters at home, so I'm looking for a yes or no question on most of these. We'll start with you, Mr. Hinckley. Yes or no? Do you think the Senate should change its rules to make it harder to filibuster a bill?
Well, I think they should start filibustering again, at least. They just say, oh, it's a filibuster, and they don't stand up and read the phone book. Let them stand up and read the phone book like the old days.
So you do not support a change in the rules?
No, let's keep it the way it is.
And Mr. Whitehouse?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. We'll stay with you, Mr. Whitehouse. Should Rhode Island pass a law allowing same-sex marriage?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Yes or no, Mr. Hinckley, would you consider dropping the 52-year-old trade embargo the U.S. has against Cuba?
No, not really, not yet. I don't think it's, I don't think it's...
Everyone else in the Western Hemisphere has called for us to end that trade embargo, but you...
You know, it's not really a priority for me, and it's not really a priority for Rhode Islanders that I'm aware of. So I'm really focused on jobs and the economy. So, you know, going down there and fighting to end a trade embargo when Rhode Islanders are suffering is not a priority for me, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yes or no, trade embargo, Mr.
I can go either way.
You could go either way?
Yeah, it's not a major issue.
If it came to a vote for you?
Then I'd drill down and look at it then, but on 10 seconds notice, it's not something that I've spent a lot of time on.
Okay, yes or no, Mr. Whitehouse, would you support term limits for members of the U.S. Senate? And if so, how long?
I would not. So no length. And certainly, if I were to do it, it would be more than 36 years because that's what Claiborne Pell served. And I think Claiborne Pell was a great Rhode Island senator and a real contribution from Rhode Island to the country.
Yes or no, Mr. Hinckley, would you support term limits?
Yes for term limits. As you know, I've already agreed to serve 2 terms. 12 years is enough. It is one of the most popular things I hear on the campaign trail. When I tell people I'm for term limits, they say, yes, we need constant turnover, constant fresh faces that are connected to Main Street. These folks get very disconnected down there in that bubble, and we need to keep fresh faces, and that's why term limits are important.
Okay. We've butchered the yes or no section here. So let me ask...
Oh, we're politicians. That's what happens.
You said it. Let me ask you briefly here. I think most people know your stance on this, but to get clarity, I'd like to ask you each a question. I'll let you expand on it briefly. Mr. Whitehouse, are you pro-choice or pro-life? And briefly explain your position.
I am pro-choice, and it requires no explanation. I think that the doctor and the patient, the woman who's the patient, have a private relationship to make medical decisions for the woman, and the government doesn't have business in that.
Okay. Mr. Hinckley.
Well, as you know, as I stated earlier, I'm pro-choice, but my personal choice is life, but that's my choice, and that's why they call it choice.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Ed Fitzpatrick.
Mr. Hinckley, you don't hear his name much these days anymore, but Herman Cain proposed a 999 tax plan that included a flat 9% individual income tax rate, a 9% corporate tax rate, and a 9% national sales tax. What's right or wrong about that plan?
Well, first of all, what's right about it is it's a new, fresh idea. Our tax code is almost 4 million words long. PolitiFacted on that one, Ed. And that is a train wreck. It's almost 100 years old. It'll be 100 next year. President Obama said we needed a new financial reform that I disagree with for the 21st century. So goes the logic. We need a new tax code to compete internationally for the 21st century. So what I like about Herman Cain's is it's a starting point. It injected a lot into the debate. It got people talking about the fact that we need real, meaningful tax reform that delivers lower rates for families, lower rates for businesses, fairer and simpler and much easier to comply with.
May I jump in on that?
999.
We clearly need a fairer and simpler tax code. But there's another measure that tax reform has to meet, and that is that it can't throw more burdens on the middle class. And over again, the things that the Republican Party and that my opponent recommend will move taxes onto the middle class. The 999 plan is not a new, fresh idea. It's a lousy idea. It will put thousands of dollars in extra taxes on middle-class families while lifting the burden off of our already rather easy going on the taxes, very high-end families. When my opponent was in Massachusetts running a fair tax outfit, he proposed eliminating the capital gains tax, eliminating the estate tax, and moving those taxes that wealthy people pay onto goods and services that everybody pays. That loads up taxes on the middle class. That's the wrong direction to go. We have tried to extend the Bush tax cuts for families making less than $250,000. We actually passed that in the Senate. The House is blocking it because the Republicans don't want that to happen because they don't want the middle class to get away
Would you sign off on that,
They
Mr.
want to hold
Hinckley?
them hostage and
$250,000 or above.
I am not signing off on any further tweaks to a broken tax code. That's why we need to start over. We need a tax code that is fair and simpler.
Well, you would have to, you may have to make a decision on something like that in the Bush tax cuts.
We need a new tax code. We might have to extend. I mean, I don't agree in raising taxes during a recession. I was with the senator in a roundtable earlier today, and he admitted that our workforce participation is at an all-time low, that our tax receipts are at a 60-year low. The tax code's broken, our economy's broken, we need a new start, a fresh beginning. That's why we pay people like Sheldon Whitehouse. He's been there for 6 years. We've paid him over $1 million. No movement on this issue. American businesses and American families, over 70% of American families say our tax code is broken and onerous and want something new. And once again, Congress is failing, both left and right. I will agree. It's a both-party problem, and we need a fresh start. And I will not vote to do anything to further complicate a broken tax code.
Briefly,
Just
Mr.
to be
Whitehouse.
clear, extending the Bush tax cuts for families making less than $250,000 a year is not a tax hike on anyone. The Republicans aren't objecting to it because it's a tax hike. They're objecting to it because it lets the middle class get away, and they can no longer hold them hostage to demand tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. We need to.
What's
your
going
time
on.
is up on that one. Sticking with you, though, Mr. Whitehouse, I received a letter last week from one of your constituents, and she wanted me to ask you this. She said that she's a state worker, and she said you and other members of Rhode Island's congressional delegation ignored retirees to be like her when they asked you to help them fight the pension cuts state lawmakers approved. And her question is it hypocritical to say in your current television ads that we need to keep Social Security out of Wall Street's hand when you didn't support Rhode Island state workers in their fight against pensions last year, for their pensions, excuse me?
Look, I thought that the solution that Rhode Island developed to the pension problems that it had was necessary. I think that you saw Governor Chafee, Treasurer Raimondo, Senate President Paiva-Weed, and Speaker Fox work together in really exemplary fashion. And Rhode Island has solved its pension situation quicker than most other states. I think they've done a good job, and I'm concerned about what the effect has been on some of the people whose pensions have been cut as a result. That has helped inform my judgment about why it's important to defend Social Security. The federal government runs Social Security. The state runs, or the municipalities run, these different pensions. Where I have authority, which is with the federal government, it is my commitment that I am going to protect and defend Social Security. It is a fundamental pillar of the American middle class, and life without it would be far worse, would be almost unimaginably worse for seniors, but also for younger people coming along who now have the safe expectation that they'll be able to have a dignified retirement.
Thank you, Mr.
So my position on
Whitehouse.
Social
Let's talk
Security
about
is crystal
Social Security
clear.
for a minute. It's a very big deal.
Please go ahead.
Right now the Democrats have zero, none, no plan to save it. Now let's use my example, because I don't want to project my life on anyone else's, but let's talk about my example and my experience with Social Security. I've paid into Social Security for 24 years. 12.4% of my income, if you count the employer contribution, which as an employer, I can tell you the money you don't get that I pay on your behalf is money you don't get. So 12.4% of my income for 25 years. Let's say I work another 24 years. I'll be 72 years old. I'll have paid into Social Security for 49 years, 12.4% of my income. And because there is no plan from the leadership, and they are in the majority, they have 2/3 of the government, no plan from the president either. The government is already telling me today that Social Security goes broke a year before I retire. So what kind of deal is that? Ask yourself, if it's you in this position, if you're 46 or in your 30s or in your 50s, or you're a grandparent and you have kids my age, ask yourself, is that fair to pay into a pension system managed by the government for 25, then 49 years and get nothing?
Well, let me take that to the next step, Mr. Hinckley. What would you propose to do instead about Social Security?
Well, Social Security is easier to fix than Medicare and Medicaid. Social Security needs to be solved by actuaries. The problem with Social Security, it's managed by career politicians, not professionals. We can call in actuaries who can solve this in an afternoon. Now, I'm going to take Social Security later in life, and I'm going to fight for that I get it later in life, because that means I'll get something. Right? So we need to extend slowly.
But you would have to vote. That seems like a cop-out, because the actuaries would put something forward and you need to vote on it.
You come in and say, listen, let's hire some professionals to solve a pension problem. Let's face it, Social Security is a pension. He even made the allegation. So It's a pension. It needs to be solved. You bring in pension experts. You say, how do you get this in actuarial balance?
Would you consider raising the retirement?
Then you adopt the resolutions, and you don't manage it politically.
All options on the table? Retirement
All options
age
are on the table. Get it later in life. Yeah, it means testing. But if you means test it, say, okay, you means test it and you're wealthy and you don't get as much, then at least be honest with that person that paid into it for their whole life and say, it's now a tax and we're going to give you a tax break because we just turned it into a tax.
All right, believe it or not,
if you mean test it, you have to have a tax credit for it.
Believe it or not, we have about 5 minutes left before you have to give your closing statements. The evening goes by very quickly, so I'm going to cover another topic.
One quick point on that, because you spent a lot of time on it. There is a very simple way to do it.
Actually, Mr. Whitehouse, you're very heavy on time.
That is to raise
so we're going to move on. Mr.
Social
Hinckley,
Security eligibility for payments.
Mr. Hinckley, you have
people who pay into it.
You have called for the National Health Care Reform Act, or Obamacare, to be repealed. Do you want to see the entire law be done away with, or are there some provisions you would like to keep in place?
Well, this is a great example of government gone wild, all right? 2,700 pages, it's estimated. No one really knows what's in it. His party even admitted they didn't know what was in it before they voted on it. So we have some specific things like staying on your health care, your parents' health care to 26, making sure we have coverage for pre-existing conditions for children, for example. We can solve these one-on-one. We don't need a 2,700-page piece of legislation that will then get passed to regulators and become thousands of pages that is now driving doctors out of businesses. I talked to a doctor yesterday in Westerly, and he told me, Barry, my peers and I are no longer going to be taking Medicare. That's a cut. $716 billion they took out of Medicare and moved into Obamacare.
Some might say doctors get paid too much, Mr. Hinckley.
Well, why don't you try paying for a doctor's education, 6 years of it in residency? These guys have, and these men and women have massive debts when they get out, and they're making less and less every year. I had a woman come into my campaign headquarters 2 weeks ago to volunteer. She said her doctor fired her after 15 years because he doesn't take Medicare anymore. That's tragic. We need to restore the funding to Medicare.
All right, so you just laid out that you like insurance for kids under the age 26 or people under the age 26.
Well, that's what happens when you have a terrible economy. Like in my business, for example, I hired kids like Mike Restivo right out of college, 21 years old, from Cumberland, Rhode Island. And I gave him health care at 21 years old. That's what we need more of. We wouldn't have to have as many kids on their parents' health care if 50% of kids graduating from college could get jobs.
So if you had to take an up or down vote, Mr. Hinckley, if you had to take an up or down vote on Obamacare and it left those things on the cutting room floor, no health insurance for people under the age 26, pre-existing coverage, would you...
Well, that's draconian. You say, listen, what do we like? This is once again how Congress works. This is why there's not a dictator there.
You also have to push the red button or the green button, and which one would you push?
What you do before you push the button is you fight for the things that are good in a bill, you keep those that have been publicly debated and are publicly embraced, and then you get rid of the stuff that doesn't work.
Mr. Whitehouse, I have 1 minute left before we get to closing. I want to stick here on this topic. Most Rhode Islanders have health insurance, yet the cost of it is taking a bigger chunk of their paycheck every year. If Obamacare isn't repealed, will Rhode Islanders pay less for their health care, and when?
Ultimately, I'm not sure exactly when, but when you see Coastal Medical in Rhode Island becoming an affordable care organization under the bill in order to reap the savings, when you see Rhode Island businesses like Jeff, a small business owner who wrote into me, who's getting the 35% tax credit for insuring his employees, you can see that that day will come. Let me close on Medicare, because my opponent can talk himself in circles on Medicare. He can't deny two things. One, the Ryan budget gets rid of Medicare in 10 years and turns it into a voucher program. And two, he would have voted for and supports the Ryan budget.
Well, I've already said I support Simpson Bulls, and this will be the third time I don't. The Ryan budget, like any other piece of legislation, is a starting point. We need bipartisan solutions. He lives in a world that is me or them, 100% me or 0% them. And when you get 100% of what you want, the other party gets Obamacare. And that's what we have. We're fighting about it 2 years later.
Okay, now to this part of the evening, each candidate will have a chance to make closing remarks. A reminder to everyone in our live audience who's been great this evening, we ask that you please hold your applause until both candidates have finished their 30-second remarks. Let's get right to them. We begin with Republican challenger Barry Hinckley. Mr. Hinckley.
Well, tonight you heard a stark contrast. I'm a businessman and a father. Please wipe away the labels D and R. I'm an independent man, just like Rhode Island is famous for. Tonight, you heard about more government to solve your problems. I've signed over 15,000 paychecks. I know what goes into a paycheck. Sheldon Whitehouse only knows what comes out of a paycheck. And there's a very, very big difference. We need to get Rhode Island back to work, and we're not going to do that by sending a career politician back to Washington, D.C. We need to send a job creator.
Thank you, Mr. Hinckley. Now, Mr. Whitehouse, your 30-second closing remarks.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who was listening. I would like to go back to Washington, and I'd like to ask for your vote to go back, to continue the fights that I've fought so hard for, to protect Medicare benefits in particular, to protect Social Security against being privatized or cut, to protect the middle class when people get together for tax schemes that over and over again hurt the middle class and send all the benefits to the top. These are the issues that we're going to be facing in the months and years ahead, and I will keep the faith with you on those issues.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now to our live studio audience, your chance to applaud the candidates. We would like to thank Rhode Island College for having us here tonight. That does it for our Campaign 2012 Senate debate. We will certainly be talking a lot about politics in the days and weeks ahead. And we remind you, the election is November 6th. Be sure to watch Eyewitness News at 10 on Fox Providence and at 11 on WPRI 12 for a complete wrap-up of tonight's debate, as well as expert analysis from our political analyst, Joe Fleming. And be sure to follow our Campaign 2012 coverage on WPRI.com. For Ted Nesi and Ed Fitzpatrick, I'm Tim White, and I want to thank you for watching this evening. Good night from Rhode Island College.